Metro, welcome to our online experience. We are so glad that you could join us today, and we would really love if you could join us in worship.
And come, let us worship our King, and come, let us bow at His feet. He has done great things, and see what our Savior has done, and see how His love overcomes. He has done great things. He has done great things. Oh, hero of heaven, you conquered the grave. You freed every captive and break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awake and alive. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. Oh. You've been faithful. You've been faithful through every storm. You'll be faithful forevermore. You have done great things, and I know that you'll do it again. For your promise is yes and amen. You have done great things. Oh yes, you have. You will do great things. Oh, oh hero of heaven, you conquered the grave. You freed every captive and break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awake and alive. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. So hallelujah, God, above it all. Hallelujah, God, unshakable. Hallelujah, you have done great things. So hallelujah, God, above it all. Hallelujah, God, unshakable. Hallelujah, you have done great things. You've done great things.
Oh, hero of heaven, you conquered the grave. You freed every captive and break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance your freedom, awake and alive. Oh Jesus, your name lifted high.
Oh God, you have done great things. God, you do great things. God, you do great things. Amen.
Hey Metro, my name is Sarah McLean, and I have a super exciting announcement for all of you ladies. This summer, we are offering a 6-week Bible study on the book of Hebrews. Now, I know what you're thinking. You have trips planned and pool days, and you don't know how you'll fit a 6-week Bible study into your schedule. I have 4 kids, and we have a million things on our calendar as well, so I get it. But one of the things that we say all the time around here at Metro is that we need to grow our souls. We need to intentionally prioritize things that are eternal. And this Bible study is a great way to do that. Many of us have so many things fighting for our attention every day. Sometimes it's a struggle just to get through the things that are facing us right in front of us today. But the book of Hebrews teaches us to walk by faith and not by sight. This summer, we'll learn to fix our eyes on Jesus. So grab a girlfriend and make this a girls' night. Come and connect with other women at Metro. We need each other. We are going to be meeting at the Riverview campus on Monday nights from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. And you can register for this Bible study on the Metro City Church app. You can find all the details there as well. Let's make this a priority. Let's put this on our calendar and just plan on it. You won't regret it, I promise. Let's make this summer count for eternity. Let's become strong in God's Word, and let's grow closer to God. I hope to see you there.
Robbie, we need to shoot. We need to shoot this video, Robbie. Come on. Dude, if you don't hurry up and get off the phone.
What up, Metro? I'm Robbie, and I struggle with focus, and maybe you know what I'm talking about. When I don't have my phone in my hand, I'm thinking about what messages do I have waiting for me? What conversations am I missing out on? And if you have kids, you know distractions aren't unique to adults. It's toys, it's friends, it's games, and it's Roblox. Everything is pulling our distraction from God. With this in mind, I'm excited to tell you about our 1-day, 1-hour VBS that we're gonna have outdoors at Taylor campus. Well, we're gonna learn how to turn our hearts and put our focus on God. Unlike previous VBSs, where it will be a week-long event, you drop your kids off and we spend our time with them, this time it's just gonna be 1 day where we're inviting the whole family to come on in. We wanna partner with you parents, where we're gonna have you group up with your kids, you're gonna have an activity pack that you'll follow along with, and you're gonna help us with the message. Rain or shine, we're gonna be coming together June 27th, which is a Saturday, at 4 p.m. Taylor campus. You can expect food, family, and live worship. And if you're not sure where you fit into this, we still need volunteers. We need people to help with crafts, we need people to help with the welcome team, and we need people to set up and tear down. If you're somebody that just wants to come and serve, leave a comment on this video and let us know, and we'll reach out to you. This will be the year of 2020 Focus.
There's a grace when my heart is under fire. Another way when the walls are closing in. And when I look at the space between where I used to be and this reckoning, I know I will never be alone. There is another in the fire, standing next to me. There is another in the waters, holding back the seas. And should I ever need reminding of how I've been set free, there is a cross that bears a burden, where another died for me. There is another in the fire. There is another in the fire. Oh, my dead left for dead beneath the waters, and I'm no longer a slave to my sin anymore. And should I fall in the space between what remains of me in this reckoning, I know I will bow to the things of this world.
And I know I will never be alone. There is another in the fire, standing next to me. There is another in the waters, holding back the seas. And should I ever need reminding, will power set me free? There is a grave that holds nobody, and now that power lives in me. There is another darkness as the darkness bows to him. I can hear the roar in the heavens as the space between we're stand. I can feel the ground shake beneath us as the prison walls cave in. Nothing stands between us. Nothing stands between us. And there is no other name but the name that is Jesus. He was and still is and will be through it all. So come one day in the space between all the things unseen in this reckoning. And I know I will never be alone. Yes, I know. And I know I will never be alone. There'll be another in the fire standing next to me. There'll be another in the waters holding back the seas. And should I ever need reminding how good you've been to me, I'll count the joy come every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. And I can see the light in the darkness as the darkness bows to it. I can hear the roar in the heavens as the space between we're sit. I can feel the ground shake beneath us as the prison walls cave in. Nothing stands between us. Nothing stands between us. Let's sing that chorus one more time.
Standing next to me, there'll be another in the water, holding back the seas. And should I ever need reminding how good you've been to me, I'll count the joy come every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. I'll count the joy come every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be.
I've heard 1,000 stories of what they think you're like, but I've heard the tender whisper of love in the dead of night, and you tell me that you're pleased and that I'm never alone. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Searching for answers far and wide, but I know we're all searching for answers. Only you provide, 'cause you know just what we need before we say a word. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. 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 Oh, you are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. Oh, just tell them you are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. Yes, you are perfect in all of your ways to us. It's love so undeniable. I can hardly speak. Being so unexplainable. I can hardly think as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still into love. Love, love, as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still into love. Love, love. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. Oh, it's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You are perfect in all of your ways. Perfect in all of your ways. Perfect in all of your ways to us.
How great the chasm and that lay between us. How high the mountain I could not climb. In desperation, I turned to heaven and spoke your name into the night. And then through the darkness, your loving kindness tore through the shadows of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Who could imagine so great a mercy? What heart could fathom such boundless grace? The God of ages stepped down from glory to wear my sin and bear my shame. And the cross has spoken, I am forgiven. The King Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your very body began to breathe out of the silence. The roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. And then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your very body began to breathe out of the silence. The roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Oh Jesus, yours is the victory. Yeah, and hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Oh, hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Oh, Jesus Christ, my living hope.
And I know my God is love. And I know my God is love. This is enough to know my God is love. And I know my God is love. And I know my God is love. This is enough to know my God is love. And I know my God is love. And I know my God is love. This is enough to know my God is love. And I know my God is love. And I know my God is love. This is enough to know my God is love. God, you're always good. In the midst of the evil of our hearts, you're still good and you still choose to love us. that's something we could never earn. That's something that I know I'm never worthy of. But God, thank you. Thank you, God. And I know my God is love. And I know my God is love. This is enough to know my God is love. And I know my God is love. I know my God is love. This is enough to know my God is love. Amen.
Hey everybody, welcome to Metro. I am so glad that you have joined us today online from your living room or from your phone or your car. It is Father's Day weekend, so happy Father's Day if you are a father out there. Lynette and I were just talking last night actually about the condition of our world. It's probably something that you're talking about in your home as well. And underneath of all of the craziness, and there is a lot of craziness out there right now, the bottom line that we came up with is we said the world is missing fathers. The world is missing families that build a life together, that stay together, that love one another, protect one another, care for one another. And so fathers in our culture have largely been forgotten and pushed aside and relegated to the backyard or something, or just out of the life of important to the family life. And so dads, you got a great responsibility. You have an incredibly important job. And so just want to encourage you to rock it, as fathers. Just rock it. Let's be good dads that love and invest in our kids, all right? Again, welcome to Metro, and we are going to jump in again to our series called Good Question. We've been talking about some pretty big, deep issues of faith, hard questions of faith, and just trying to provide some answers that hopefully will move your faith along a little bit. And so I want to begin with this. Do you remember about, it's got to be 25 years ago or more, the O.J. Simpson case? Remember, O.J. was arrested. He was this famous football player, made all these TV commercials, very, very famous athlete, and he was put on trial for murder of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown, and a guy named Rod Goldman. Y'all remember that, right? All of America followed the car chase, the famous, was it a white Bronco car chase through Los Angeles or something like that? And the arrest, we followed the trial, the whole deal. It was crazy, and everyone thought, this guy's guilty. I mean, it just seemed like, all the evidence was lining up against him. Everyone was, just kind of dialed into the whole thing. And we were amazed when the jury came back with an innocent verdict. Do you remember that? Like, people were like, what? Because it seemed like all the evidence pointed to his guilt. But do you remember what the jurors said? Here's what the jurors said. When they came out on television, they said, they were asked, why did you return the innocent verdict? And they said, it was the white glove. It was the white glove. It didn't fit. And that gave them what is termed legally as a reasonable doubt. Prosecuting attorneys are asked to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the standard phraseology used by judges in our judicial system, right? The judge reminds all the participants in the trial that the prosecuting attorney must present sufficient evidence to convince a jury beyond what? Beyond a reasonable doubt, not beyond a shadow of a doubt. In other words, there can always be some doubt. There can always be some skepticism. A little bit of doubt is okay, and it's reasonable to even have a little bit of doubt, right? So to expect any prosecuting attorney to present enough evidence to convince all the jurors beyond a shadow of a doubt is deemed by our culture, by our judicial system, as unreasonable as it is unrealistic in its expectation. In fact, in almost every dimension of everyday life, we all make decisions based on high probability, seldom on absolute certainty. Follow on this. When we're about to board an airline, we talked about this earlier in the series, right? To LA or wherever, we don't know with absolute certainty that once it leaves Metro Detroit, that it will subsequently land in Los Angeles or wherever you're heading, right? There is a high probability that it will happen, but the evidence, and there's enough evidence to convince us that those of us who are holding a ticket, there's enough evidence for us to get on the plane, but absolute certainty? No. Are we absolutely 100% certain that we're going to land safely? I don't think so. I have stood with many grooms, right, on their wedding day with sweating palms, and they're nervous as can be. Why are they nervous? Because on their wedding day, they are going to be taking this young lady into their life, and they're committing the rest of their life to be one, to come together, to be married. They think she's the one. They're hoping she's the one. They plan that she's the one. But absolute, beyond a doubt, beyond a shadow of a doubt, level certainty, I don't know. I mean, out of all the girls on planet Earth, they're thinking, is this the right one? I mean, there's a lot of girls on planet Earth, right? So, friends, you cannot be absolutely certain that you will even have a job tomorrow. Think about this. What if fire destroys your plan, or, you don't really know, what tomorrow will bring. You don't even know that when you go to lunch tomorrow that you won't die from that. I mean, more than likely you won't, but who's to say that you won't get some sort of deadly bacterial poisoning, right? My own favorite place on planet Earth, Chipotle, had a series of, poisonous outbreaks with their food. I still go back because I love it too much to even worry about it, right? But the probability is there that you'll be okay, but beyond a shadow of a doubt, I'm not so sure. All of us are forced to live with this measure of uncertainty, and we grow accustomed to weighing the evidence, weighing the odds, right? Considering the data, and making our decisions based on high probability, not absolute certainty, except for like in the areas of, let's say, math and maybe formal logic, or stuff like that. Maybe all the rest of life, all of it must be negotiated in the realm of high probability, or on the basis of probability. We don't live in the realm of beyond a shadow of a doubt. We live in the realm of a reasonable doubt. Now, I bring up all this because it's extremely important to establish this kind of thinking for this series called Good Question, right? We've been talking about all these very intense issues, and we've been just trying to say that there are some good probable answers to all of the questions that surround, the issues of faith and the Bible and God and all that kind of stuff. And we haven't been afraid to deal with some really, really hard, deep questions. Like, 1 week we talked about during the series the idea of racism and slavery and what does the Bible say about it? And we wanted to tackle that, right? And we talked about, was Christ, Jesus, was he a myth? Was he even real at all? Last week we talked about, hasn't science crushed God or negated God or proven that God is wrong? So we've been talking about some really intense stuff, and today is going to be another intense day. Today we're going to talk about some serious stuff, and we're going to talk about this idea of the existence of God. Does God even exist? I hope that you'll have an open mind to this. I'm not sure that you will. I don't know if you've already convinced yourself that he's real or if he's not real, but my hope is that you'll have an open heart to maybe see God in a new way, or to maybe take some steps toward him. And I hope that our time together might even put a little light into your search for truth in your life. All right? So we have to admit that much of culture is pushing away from God. I remember a major movie that came out, it was a while ago. To me, it was incredibly creative. The storytelling, I thought, was brilliant, but it was an all-out challenge to the belief in God, and many people missed this part of the movie. They just didn't even catch it, but the movie was a challenge to belief in God, the whole thing. Jim Carrey played one of his more serious roles back in the 1998 movie called The Truman Show. I don't know if you saw it. It's a fascinating film in which we watch Carrey play Truman. And think about it, true man. So his name was Truman Burbank, or True Man Burbank, and he was a young man who was adopted as a newborn by the Omnicam Corporation. Remember this? Omnicam had created this movie set the size of a city and places Truman in it shortly after his birth. And literally, we kind of watch him grow up. All through his life, he believes that his life in the town called Sea Haven. Okay, now notice the similarity between the word heaven and haven. Okay, this is the point of the movie. Trust me. Okay, he grows up thinking Sea Haven is this normal, even idyllic kind of a city, but his world he actually lives in is actually fake. It's a tightly controlled world. His parents, his friends, and even his wife are all actors, all of them. There are 5,000 hidden cameras in the set, which, unknown to Truman, are televising almost every step he takes in life. He does not even realize it, but he's been like caged in this make-believe town his entire life for the sake of TV ratings and commercial profits. Truman is the unwitting star of the longest running and most popular reality show ever in this movie, right? The show's director is a guy named, listen to this, Christoph. Notice the use of the name Christ in his name, right? And Christoph is like this godlike character, this director who is controlling everything in Truman's world. Now, Truman's reality has been manipulated by Christoph, and Truman believes himself to be a happy, well-adjusted man. The sky is perfect because he lives in a computer-controlled climate, but it's all a false reality, yet it is the only reality Truman has ever known. But after 30 years of living in Sea Haven, Truman slowly begins to realize that the answers people have given him, about life don't quite make sense. And he starts to question everything about the world in which he lives. You seen any similarities to the issue of believing in God or the existence of God yet? So listen to this. In the movie, in a valiant attempt to escape this false world, he kind of sails across this pretend sea and he faces his biggest fear. He emerges from this kind of like dome-like structure in which he has lived his entire life. He opens the door and he walks outside to the real world, to the free world, right? And so this movie called The Truman Show, it literally is trying to make a point that even though Truman was happy before, he was like a happy guy, he was actually, though, a tragic figure because his world was based on something that was not real. So even though he was happy, that happiness didn't matter because the reality of his world was all fake, right? The things that he believed in held him captive, and he did not really have true freedom. The film implies that even though the true man is happy with his world, he would be willing to see that much of that happiness go away because it wasn't real. It's all an illusion. Does that make sense? So you see what the movie was teaching? It was teaching that organized religion. This is what the movie was really about, right? It was teaching that organized religion has used the idea of God or Jesus, Christ, to control people, right, and to regulate their understanding of reality. They use it for profits, but authentic individuals will break out from that. They'll find their true self, their true freedom away from that, even though their current world might be safe and comfortable, right? They'll leave what is safe and comfortable to experience what is real, because that's where true freedom. It encourages people to break out of this make-believe world where God seems to be the director, the Christoph, right? But authentic and courageous people will use their minds to escape this bubble that they're living in called Christianity. So the show's writers are really taking an old philosophical idea and presenting it in a new kind of pop culture way, right? The 19th century philosophy, which gained notoriety through writings from guys like David Hume and Sigmund Freud, said that God is simply a product of our imagination. That's what they would say, that God is simply a product of our imagination. We wished for something like God to be real, and so the human race made him real. They made him up because we needed a God to fill this space inside of us. It felt good to think of a benevolent, holy being that was actually in control of the world. It made the world seem more manageable. It made the world seem less chaotic, right? And it seemed more fulfilling this way. So man was not created in the image of God, Sigmund Freud would say, but man created God in man's image. It was the other way around, right? The challenge for Christians is how to answer this kind of thinking that an unbelieving and skeptical world has toward the Christian faith. How do we help people to see that God is just not a product of our collective imaginations, and that a worldview which includes God at the center as the creator of it all is not make-believe? How do we help them to experience the God that us as Christians know and love? And so over the next few moments, I want us to talk about, does God even exist? Are there any evidences for the existence of God? Now, just some simple thoughts that I hope I can give to you to help maybe you get past this idea of doubt, right? I want you to at least come into the realm of reasonable doubt, right? Because I don't think you can always neatly package a belief in anything, like we've been talking about, right? There's a reasonableness to faith, and sometimes there's a doubt even to faith. But I just hope to move you forward today a little bit about faith, okay? One thing I want to mention is this. When you talk about faith, you have to understand, when you talk about the existence of God, you have to understand that there are entire libraries filled with books that debate the existence of God. So as I jump into this, I don't pretend that over the next 20 minutes, I'll be able to settle this debate with anybody, okay? I don't pretend to be able to convince you or anybody perfectly over the next few minutes. But again, my hope is just to move us along. And so would you just have an open heart? So if you're watching, maybe you could type in there, I have an open heart. If you have questions, type them in there. We'll get to those questions. But I just hope that you have an open heart. Okay, so don't just sit there as you're listening, debating every single sentence, every single word that I say, because you'll miss the bigger story that I'm trying to paint for you today, okay? I'm just asking you to be receptive and humble of heart, and just listen with an open mind for a few moments, okay? So you ready? This is big. I mean, some really, really big stuff. Think about how big this is. I think whether consciously or unconsciously, what we believe about God determines just about everything about a person. Belief in God shapes the way that you view life, the way that you view death and right and wrong and suffering and justice and pain and the meaning and purpose of virtually everything. If there is no God, life has little to no purpose, right? If there is no God, there is no afterlife. There is no life after death. If there is no God, there is no such thing as ultimate right and ultimate wrong. There is no such thing as judgment or consequences in the next life for what we do in this life. Everything becomes absolutely relative. There is no truth if there is no God. Everything is relative to what you think. If we're just chemicals, it's just relative to what your chemical makeup allows you to believe or forces you to believe, right? If there is no God, all of our suffering, think about this, all of our suffering is meaningless pain. It doesn't have an explanation or a purpose to it. If there is no God, everything that exists is just a cosmic accident with no eternal meaning or consequence at all. But if there is a God, this changes everything, doesn't it? It changes our purpose. It changes the meaning for our existence. It changes even the very way that we live our life. It determines what happens for us when we die. It changes our moral compass. It changes the end goal of our lives. I would think it would, right? So you can see just how big this is. There is nothing bigger than this idea of, does God even exist? So let me throw out a couple of big ideas to you. And the first is what I'm going to call evidence from creation. Evidence from creation. Now, look around at your world for a second. If you're kind of listening in your car, just look around. If you're in your house, look at your home and your backyard. Just look around for a moment. Unless you are kind of way out there, you will conclude just by looking around that things exist, right? That we live inside of a reality, that things are real, that they exist. Like on your drive today, you'll see trees. Trees exist. Grass exists. Water, sun, it exists. It's real. You look outside and you see some things are in existence, right? And so here's the question. Why do things exist? How did this happen? What is the cause of it all? Philosophers from ancient days until now, they call this the principle of sufficient reason. They simply say there has to be a sufficient reason to explain everything that exists. Now, just suppose for a moment that nothing existed, right? Would nothingness require an explanation? I know it sounds kind of weird. I know it's getting a little bit kind of psychedelic, but think about it. Does nothingness require an explanation? The answer is no. The split second something comes into existence, that's when you ask, how did it get here? Why is it here? Who made it? Who created it, right? For example, you're driving across the country and you're driving, let's say, across the Badlands of South Dakota, right? There's not a lot there. It's just kind of scrubby lands and, scattered rocks and scattered trees. There's just not a whole lot there. But you're cruising across the Badlands for hours, and nothing's there really. And then all of a sudden, you hit Mount Rushmore, and you see those giant sculptures of the 4 presidents embedded into the side of that mountain. You don't just go, look, nature at work. You don't do that. No, the second that the scene changes and all of a sudden you see these 4 monster, statues carved into the side of the mountain, you ask the question, how did they get there? That's a reasonable question, right? There had to be something that caused these things to come into existence. Somebody had to do that. Somebody had to put it there. Somebody had to do the work, right? It just makes sense. So this is called the philosophy of causation, right? What caused it? The moment that something exists, there has to be an explanation for it. So now, the second thought I want to talk about is the evidence from creation. And it's this, is that when we carefully observe all the stuff that we see existing around us, right? Once we start to look at all this stuff, we conclude that everything seems to be contingent, right? Philosophers call this the principle of contingency. Everything is dependent on something else for its existence. Everything that is alive is contingent on something else. Everything we see is dependent on something else for its existence. Like the trees need the air and the grass needs water. They both need sun, right? We need food. I mean, everything, nothing we observe around us seems to be utterly independent, self-caused, or self-reliant. Nothing, am I right? We can all agree on this, right? Nothing stands utterly alone. In fact, science tells us that nothing actually lasts forever. Everything actually breaks down when it's left to itself, right? This is called the second law of thermodynamics. It reminds us that everything in the universe, no matter how great it is and how grand it is, it's actually in a gradual state of entropy or a state of decline. Everything is slowly declining. Everything rusts, everything fades, everything withers eventually. This includes human beings. And if you need further proof of that, just get out your high school graduation picture and compare yourself to then to now, right? It will give you proof that you and I are in a gradual state of entropy. We're in a state of decline. This is one of the laws of science, right? So this idea of contingency, think about this, that everything we observe seems to be connected and reliant on something else and not independent or self-caused or self-reliant. And all of that leads us to ask a really big question. Listen, if all that exists is fragile and contingent and is fading away, how is it all held together? How is it all maintained? Who or what holds it all together? If science can be believed, and if scientists say that everything is fading and falling apart and will eventually come to an end, then why hasn't everything fallen apart? Why hasn't everything come to an end? What or who is keeping that from happening? Okay, so let's kind of expand our understanding. Let me help you understand something. I'm going to go over to my famous whiteboard, and if you've been around Metro for any length of time, you'll know just how incredible of an artist I am, how creative and how neat I am. None of that is true. And but I want us to think about this. I want you to pull yourself out of the universe for a moment. And some of you are thinking, I am the center of the universe. I can't pull myself out. That's a whole different message we got to deal with later, okay? I'm just kidding. But get away from the universe. Just try to pull yourself out for a moment. And let me just illustrate like this. So let's just draw. Oh, boy, it's not very clear. Okay? So here's a giant circle, right? And that circle represents the universe. I want you to think about this. That circle represents the universe, and all of the galaxy, everything that exists is inside of this circle. So I'll just kind of represent it by drawing your house, and here's a door, and you've got your windows, and it kind of looks like a sad person. I don't know. But then there's you, and there's your little wife, and you got your baby, so she's got arms. So, and you got your little babies over here, and your puppy dog, and there's my little Winston right there. See that? That's my little Winston puppy. But think about this. Everything that exists is inside of this. Now go with me on this for a second. If we draw this circle represents the sum total of all reality, right? And if we've already concluded that everything inside of this circle, if everything inside of our universe, the sun and the moon and the clouds and all that, we've already concluded that everything in the circle is contingent and dependent on something else. Think about it. Everything is dependent on something else for its existence, and it's slowly fading. The big question then is, what caused this, right? What is the first place cause? What is the beginning of all of this? Where did it all come from? So we have to ask the question, is it more logical to explain the cause? Is the explanation for the cause likely to be found in this circle or outside of this circle? Think about this for a second. If everything in here is contingent and fading away, because we know that's true, then is the cause more likely to be inside or outside the circle? How rational is it to locate the ultimate cause and sustainer of everything inside of the circle? I would humbly submit to you that it's not very rational. It doesn't make a lot of sense because everything in here takes something else to make it exist. Everything in here took something to cause it to exist. So to me, it just sort of makes sense, right? If all of this comes into existence and it doesn't come in on its own, where does it come from? It has to come from outside. And so what do we call this, right? As Christians, and I know that not everybody listening is a Christian, but I want you to think about this. The Bible calls this thing that causes everything to exist God. And it's interesting. We're not going to spend a lot of time in the Bible this morning trying to prove the existence of God, but I do find it interesting how the Bible describes God, or how it describes this created situation, okay? It says this in the very first simple phrase of the Bible. It says, in the beginning, God created. Genesis 1:1, right? You have to decide if that statement is true and beyond a reasonable doubt. But I think it's reasonable to think that all the creation that is so interdependent on each other, and none of it is self-sustaining or self-causing, that it just seems reasonable that there is a causer, that there's a creator that is outside of the creation. But here's something that's really interesting. Everyone in the scientific community believes that the universe had a beginning. You do realize that, right? Everybody says there had to be a moment of beginning. Most people, especially in the science community, now call this the Big Bang Theory. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later here today, I think. But one of the most obvious things in the world is that everything with a beginning has a cause. So track with me, right? The universe exists. Matter, energy, time, and space, it exists. The universe had a beginning, right? everything with a beginning has a cause. Therefore, the universe has a cause, and that universe and the cause of that universe has to be outside of itself, outside of the universe. This is obvious, right? You don't cause you to be you. There has to be a cause for you. This is just common sense, right? This is obvious. Since the universe had a beginning, there must be a cause to the universe that is outside of the universe. Now, think about this even a little bit deeper. If there is a cause to the universe that is outside of the universe, where did that cause come from, right? And if you go back far enough, you go, what was the first cause of all the other causes, right? No matter how far you drag this out, there has to be a cause for what came at the beginning, right? And what emerges from that is this. In order for anything to exist, something must always have existed. Think about it. In order for anything to exist, something must have always existed. Something must always be eternal. If there was ever a time that nothing existed, what would be here today? Nothing. Right? Think about it. I mean, what does nothing do? Nothing. Kind of like some of your teenagers, right? Just kidding, just kidding. But what does nothing do? There's this principle out there called the principle of nothingness, right? And it simply means this, that nothing plus nothing equals nothing. Now, doesn't a rational, reasonable thinking person have to conclude that the cause of everything in the circle must lie from outside of the circle? And by definition, what lies outside of that circle must be absolutely independent, self-caused, and self-reliant, which would make it eternal, which would make it unlimited and all-powerful. And my friends, listen, that comes awfully close to a definition or a working definition of God. I mean, doesn't that sound at least reasonable? This is interesting. The scripture says this about God, about himself. Now listen to this. This is interesting. Found in the book of Colossians, it says, all things were created by him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. So I just want you to think about that. The scripture seems to understand that there is a principle of causation, the principle of God at work here, right? Because God is not contingent on anything else. He's utterly self-reliant and eternal. So the first argument comes from what we call the evidence of creation, or from creation. And it asks this question: who put everything there, or what put everything there? The second argument I want to just kind of throw out to you today is an argument called evidence from design. Evidence from design. And it asks this, a different question. It says, what or who is responsible for all the intricacies or all the complexities, the wonder and the coordination of our world? I mean, if you look at the created realm, it is incredibly complex, right? Philosopher William Paley was his name. He simply wrote that there cannot be design without a designer. There cannot be design without a designer. In his book on Albert Einstein called Einstein, His Life and Universe, author Walter Isaacson told of a dinner party in Berlin where everybody assumed at this dinner party Einstein was there, and that they assumed Einstein was an atheist. So Einstein's at this dinner party, and he actually is recorded saying these words. This is interesting. No, he's asked if he's an atheist, and he says, no, I have a deep feeling of faith, a deep religiosity that comes from my appreciation of the way the Lord made the universe. And when Albert Einstein said that, everybody was stunned, and the whole world, was really stunned at his proclamation of a belief in at least a deity of some kind. Einstein used a little story of why he wasn't an atheist. And Isaacson, in his book, he records this story. Einstein says it like this. He says, he was like a child when he does his science, when he does his work. He says he's like a child walking into a library, and you see all of the books, and somebody must have written them. And you see all of the order of the library, and somebody must have ordered them. It leaves you in awe. So Einstein's belief in God was informed by his belief in science. Interesting. He believed that underlying everything, because everything is so complex and so ordered, he said that there are, underneath of all of the laws of nature, there's a law of God somewhere. Walter Isaacson records just how incredible the journey for Einstein was to coming to faith in at least a God. Now, Einstein was not a Christian, though. There's no evidence that he became a believer as we understand followers of Jesus. He didn't have any personal relationship with a personal deity that we know about or that he ever wrote about. But Einstein said, while he is not sure that the God of the universe is personal, he said that he could not deny that which is obvious, that there is a God. The design argument simply challenges the familiar theory that says everything we see around us came together or came into existence by sheer chance. The design argument says there's just no way that could happen. Today, most scientists believe in what we call the Big Bang Theory, right? We started to talk about this a little bit ago. The way I understand it, the Big Bang Theory goes something like this, that there was this chance collision of space that was out there set in motion, and there was this floating gas kind of floating around, and there was this series of events that caused them to collide in some way, and then it set this series of natural selection events in motion, what we would call evolution in motion, and then billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of years had to take place, and it finally brought from nothingness into the complexities of our state of being that we live in today, right? And you've heard these kinds of theories, right? It's taught almost everywhere in our educational systems. Yet no single scientist can adequately explain where the mysterious gas floating in some universe came from to begin with, right? They outright blush in embarrassment at the mathematical probabilities of random chance collisions producing even a single molecule, let alone something so complex as humans, as a bird in flight or mountains coming out of the ground. I mean, the world is far too complex for people just to say it's here by accident. And yet people just keep insisting on that. And it doesn't seem to make sense to me. The design argument basically says that the random chance explanation for the complexity and design and the order of our world is highly unlikely, so much so that it's actually unreasonable to believe in random chance creating you and me, right? It's unreasonable. It says that whenever and wherever there is purpose and order and design and structure, reasonable people conclude that someone or something was responsible for it. There are over 60 things, I want you to think about this, that are determined to be critical for life to exist on our planet. And here's just a list of them. I think you might find this fascinating. Life could not exist if any one of the following were untrue, even in the slightest, right? If the world was slower or faster in the rotation of Earth, right? If Earth was even 2 to 5% closer or further from the sun, we would all freeze or burn up. 1% change in the amount of sunlight would kill us all. Think about that. Earth was smaller or larger just a little bit, the whole thing would fall apart. If the moon was smaller or larger, more than one moon would cause life to totally be annihilated on Earth, they tell us, right? If the Earth's crust was any thicker or thinner, it would change everything. If oxygen or nitrogen ratio was different, life could not exist. All of this is amazing, right? If any of these things were different, even in the slightest, we would instantly die. The evidence of design is obvious to me. There is a creator that knew what he was doing. When we look at the world, it's been said that by countless people, it's been said by countless people that it takes far more faith to attribute the wonders of our world to chance collision of floating gases than to accept the existence of an all-knowing, all-powerful, eternal God. And I believe that to be true. I just want to ask all of you, how honest are you really being with the evidence in your own heart? I mean, is it really possible that everything that we see comes from nothing? Is it possible? The next time you hold a baby in your arms and you believe that, that's something wonderful, and I'm guessing you do. When you look at the complexity, the blinking of the eye, the movement of the hand, is that an accident? Or is there some sort of designer behind all this? I can tell you what the scripture says. And I know I don't want to use the Bible to prove the Bible, right? Or anything like that, or to prove God. But it is interesting what the Bible says about this idea of the complexity of creation. It says this in the book of Psalms, chapter 139, 13 and 14. It says, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, Lord, because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, and I know that full well." So the writer of Psalms was looking at this and going, I just can't deny the evidence of design. I just can't deny it. All I'm asking for you to do is just be honest with the weight of the evidence. Be reasonable. Okay, so there's evidence from creation, there's evidence from design, but now let me talk about a different kind of evidence, an evidence from the human experience, we're going to call it. Some people call this the moral argument. Very simply put, the moral argument or the evidence of the human experience goes like this. How is it that human beings everywhere worldwide recognize common moral codes? How is it that human beings everywhere have a sense of moral oughtness to them, like they ought to do something that's good and right? Think about this. There is a common thread that weaves its way through all of the human experience, from thousands of years ago to today, from rich to poor, black to white, from big city to out in the jungle bushes. There's this common thread of the moral argument that weaves its way through. If human beings were simply evolved from gases, or just kind of maybe recent improvements of apes or something like that, how does one account for the fact that in almost every culture on the planet, from every point in human history, from every race, language, education, economic condition, people value truth-telling over deceitfulness? Now, of course, we don't always tell the truth, but we value truth-telling toward us over deceitfulness. We value kindness over violence. We value loyalty over backstabbing, right? Hope over despair, peace over war, forgiveness over revenge. How do you explain that? If we're just accidents of gases and germs and genes, could those things like gases and germs and genes, could they produce on their own some sort of remarkable, consistent codes of values? Could they implement those things into the human heart and the minds of billions and billions of individual people worldwide, all through human history? Really? Can evolution explain that away? Why is it that we just know that murder is wrong? I mean, we just know it. Stealing is wrong. Destroying somebody else's stuff is just wrong. How come the world collectively rises up against tyrants that want to kill innocent people, right? And how come the world comes to the aid of victims? How come something stirs deep in our hearts, inside of the human heart, when we see orphans and homeless people and poor people and crippled people? We want to do something to help, right? If we do not have a moral law implanted on our hearts and on our minds from a supreme moral being, how do you explain all of this? Sometimes I hear atheist thinkers and even friends of mine trying to appeal to our sense of justice for some social cause like recycling or save the planet or clean water or whatever it is. They try to appeal to a sense of justice inside of humanity, right? I ask this question: where does the moral oughtness come from, right? Who put it there, right? Why is it seemingly overwhelmingly consistent throughout humanity? And friends, I ask you to contemplate this. Ask yourself the question: if this universal sense of justice did not come from the effects of a supreme moral being, then how did it get here? How do you explain it? Well, the Bible, again, says it this way. I think you find this interesting, these little Bible passages that kind of correlate with this. It says, "For since the creation of the world, God has put his invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature inside of us. It has been clearly seen by humanity, being understood from what has been made, so that men are without excuse." In other words, friends, God has stamped his conscience on the heart of humanity. We know evil when we see it. We know beauty and goodness when it stares us in the face. And I humbly submit to you that it is God who put that in the hearts of the human experience. All right. I know I'm running out of time here, but let me just touch on one last thing and I'll be out. Okay. I'm going to call this the evidence from personal experience, not just the big human experience, but from personal experience. Now, I admit that this argument is far from conclusive, and it may not even be persuasive at all to you. But when it's combined with the other evidences that we talked about earlier, I think it's very compelling. Think about this. Millions and millions of trustworthy people have felt a personal presence of God in their life and claim to have this active, vibrant relationship with him. They received direction from him. They felt his love and grace, and they feel like they've been given this strength, this second wind of life, right, for some task or calling that they might have. They felt his comfort in the midst of unbelievable suffering and tragedy. Friends, I get it. Well, you can say, well, that's just you. I've never felt God, and I'm not buying it. I get it. Listen, I get it. It's very possible that well-meaning people have been self-deluded or are deceived in some way, or that maybe they can even manufacture some sort of claim to have this sense of spirituality. I get all that. And that would be true, I think, if it was just a few cases, or even a few hundreds or a few thousand cases, or even a couple 100,000 cases. But we're talking about thousands and thousands of years and billions of people all across the world, right? Who have made this same claim of a personal connection to God. And we're talking about some of the finest thinkers that humanity has ever produced, well-adjusted, non-pot smoking people all over the world my pot smoking friends, you need to chill out a little bit. It was a joke, okay? But people all over the world, from all walks of life, have claimed to have a real relationship with God. Presidents and world leaders, judges and scientists, as well as honorable butchers and factory workers and homemakers have all claimed to receive forgiveness and grace from God. Somehow they just know it's real because they have personally met with God. And I know that there are those in our church who will go so far as to say that God has transformed their lives, that their life was heading in one direction, but they were, and something changed, that they connected with God. There are those of us in our church that would tell you that they had been blindsided by, I don't know, tragic news or something like that, but they immediately felt the calming and comforting hand of God in their life. Friends, I know personally people, including myself, who were heading in one direction, where God got a hold of their hearts and their minds and caused a new direction to stir within them. And now they would claim, like I do, to have a very personal walk with God through his son, Jesus. Friends, how do you explain this universal desire that is inside of even you to know God, to know about God, to know if God is real? Friends, even those of my friends who are atheists, they still want to know if God is real. How do you explain that desire? Is it just some sort of human conspiracy that's pushed on them? No, friends, I think all of us have stared at the ceiling at night wondering if there's a God, because I think God has put that desire to know him within you. You know, I think about growing up, and I grew up in the era of communist Russia, the Soviet Union, and they effectively stamped God out of their society for almost 80, 90 years, right? More than a generation, or several generations. You know, they were grown up with no teaching of belief in God. And yet, coming out of the Iron Curtain after post-Soviet Union, studies all across the Soviet Union said that 85 to 90% of all Russian people still believe in God, even though the government tried to stamp the existence of God completely out. Even here in America, interest in God and spirituality, it's still alive and vibrant, right? It's not in decline. Maybe some church going or organized religion may be in decline in so many ways. It really is. But interest in God, I don't think so. I rarely meet a person that's not willing to talk about God or spiritual things in some way. St. Augustine put it this way. great philosopher from Africa. He says, Lord, you have made us for yourself, and our hearts are restless until they find their rest in you. Blaise Pascal, a brilliant mathematician, philosopher, writer, he wrote one time, he said, there is a God-shaped vacuum in every human heart. Or to borrow the words of the great Bruce Springsteen, everybody's got a hungry heart. And I would just say our hearts hungers for God. And unfortunately, we live in a world that tries very hard to stamp out God, that tries to cover that hunger for God. It tries to satisfy your soul through sex and drugs and drinking and materialism and experiences and pleasure. We do everything in us to cover our spiritual hunger. Friends, don't let that happen. Don't let that happen. Honest people everywhere need to peel back those things that are trying to cover your soul. And you need to figure out this question for yourself. Does God even exist? Stop pretending, friends, that you do not need him. Stop pretending that your heart isn't looking for him, because I believe that it is. I believe that it is. And if you seek God, you will find him, because he is already seeking you. If you knock at heaven's door, he will open, because he's waiting for you. He's waiting for you. So, to kind of wrap this up a little bit, I just want to pray for you. And again, I don't know if you believe, but I just want to invite you to take your next step with God. So can I do this even right now? If you're driving, keep driving, don't get in an accident or anything like that. But if you can, just bow your heart for a moment. Even if you doubt God, bow your heart just for a moment, okay? Jesus, all across this place, wherever people are watching and listening, I pray that your Spirit would speak into their hearts. Lord, I personally am absolutely convinced that people want to know you, and their heart is already looking for you. So God, would you speak to them? Would you somehow cause a stirring inside of them and help them to know that you are near? Maybe right now, you need to even just say, Jesus, if you're real at all, I invite you to come near to me. I invite you to come into my heart. Forgive me for all the things that have taken me away from you. Forgive me for the shallowness of soul. Forgive me for my sin. And I accept you, and I want to know you. Help me to grow. Help me to walk in you. Others of you might just need to say, God, help me to take my next step. Help me to grow a little bit in this. But God, I know that you want to meet with us. So I pray that you would touch and speak to and reveal yourself to the hearts of men and women everywhere. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Hope to see you next week.